just finished up a conversation with Tyler Vartenigian. He's an employee benefits and health insurance benefits broker, advisor, expert, really, one that we use in our firm. And his group is locally based here. I'm in the New England area, but they have a sort of a national outreach through a whole connection of other similar firms like his. And the conversation really opened my eyes in terms of the options that are available for business owners. You don't have to be that large in order to sort of take on some of the things that typically in the past large firms have been able to do. And he touched on some things like PEO, which is professional employee organizations, where your employees are in effect leased from them to you. You don't really lose any control, but it's just a kind of a different way to offer employee benefits. There's a whole host of things that can be attached to that piece, HR consulting, just a whole host of things that you can do. And it's now available actually for smaller businesses to be able to do it. I had no idea. I've heard about it and I've seen it in large corporate areas, divisions, and things like that. But that actually opens up kind of a whole new realm of thinking in terms of how you design your benefits, how you design your health insurance. There's certainly some tax advantages to it as well. So I would suggest you take a look or listen to the recording. It's about 20 minutes. It's a little hard to hear me. We're having a beer outside, and I just put the microphone on the table and sort of forced it towards him. So you can hear him better than me, but you can certainly hear my questions as well. It's about 20 minutes long. And I think you'll find it very interesting. He also goes into captive insurance, which again, I always thought was for the big boys, but it actually isn't. And, other things, level funding as well as another sort of way to sort of handle your health insurance costs. So it's a whole host of different things. Typically, what I've seen from most of the business owners we work with, health insurance is kind of just a broker providing a product and servicing that product. But Tyler's approach is different. There's a lot of different tools that you can use. I thought it was very enlightening. There's certainly some tax aspects to it, but it's also just a better way to sort of manage this whole host of employee benefits side. So I'm sure you'll take a lot out of it. Get out a pad of paper and take some notes and enjoy yourself. I think you'll learn from it. Certainly you'll be able to reach directly out to him. His information's at the beginning, at the end of the video, and of course mine as well if you need to reach out to me.
Sounds good.
But thanks, Tyler. I appreciate the time.
Not a problem.
We're sitting outdoors, drinking a beer, and talking about employee benefits. You're an expert, in my opinion, and you know what you're talking about. So I just thought maybe we could get into the health insurance area a little bit.
Sure.
And give me some ideas. I think a lot of people think of health insurance as just being one thing. There's a lot of varieties to it and how it's designed through your employer or not. So, if you could just sort of enlighten me and enlighten them.
Sure.
That'd be great.
Well, back in the old days when I first started, health insurance was either fully insured or self-funded. There wasn't a lot of variation in terms of what kind of products or services we could offer.
Right.
Now there is an absolute ton of different types of options and considerations when taking a look at employee benefits, especially health insurance.
Is that because of the Obamacare legislation, or is that just sort of the migration of the business?
Migration of the business, more simply put. There are a lot of different players that are looking to get into the market. As an example, a relatively old player, but that's starting to come into vogue again, is a professional employer organization. So a PEO, which can be done really in a number of different ways. It could be, where you seed your employees to an actual company and then literally rent them back, or you can just buy the services, but those services include no longer just employee benefits such as life, health, dental, and disability, but it also includes payroll, it includes investments, includes human resources, workers' compensation. So it's really an entire turnkey package that you're actually purchasing.
Right. So a smaller business can provide sort of that whole larger business experience.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And I think that depending on the type of business owner and the type of business, they'll either resonate with the concept or not.
Yeah.
But what I like about it is that for those smaller businesses, and even mid-sized businesses, there's a great opportunity to get this all-in-one package and try to obtain some preferential pricing, because the way the PEO is set up, you're really getting into a much larger pool.
I see.
Now, granted, there's some underwriting that's involved, but I think by and large, it's something which I think is going to start becoming a lot more popular as we move into the 2020s, 2030s. I really see that as a big option.
Right. So there's actual cost savings as well to, say, a construction company or somebody who's got 20 employees.
Oh, absolutely.
Then they're
absolutely.
A bigger pool, so I guess it's more of a shared risk and all of that.
Exactly. And something else to keep in mind too, in the marketplace, there's obviously small group, which is usually your 1 to 50 size employee market.
Okay.
Then there's your 50 and above. So a lot of the products and services in the state of Connecticut have been geared more to the smaller market, because by and large there's been a lot more of these smaller companies, a lot of mom and pops that really, need the coverage.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's also the highest price point.
Yeah.
So a new product that's relatively, hit the scenes probably about 4 years ago was something called level funding.
Level funding.
And what level funding is, in short, is self-funding on a smaller basis. So what you're really doing with level funding is you're doing a little bit of underwriting, but it's got some great characteristics. You're actually paying a level premium each month. So instead of the highs and lows that you get with a normal self-funded program, this locks in what your rates are.
Okay.
In addition, there's a lot of different advantages to this type of program, because if you happen to run a surplus during the course of the year, then most carriers will give you some sort of a percentage of that back. Certain carriers may give 40, certain carriers may give as much as 50% of that surplus back at the end of the year.
And each year's a restart again?
And each year's a restart.
I see. So you have one bad year, it doesn't mess you up forever?
Well, let's put it this way. With self-funding, you have to understand that you're going to be basically doing your own insuring.
Yeah.
And as you go, or as your claims go, so
Just
goes
like
your...
if I have 5 accidents with my car.
Exactly. You're probably going to be in a high-risk pool.
Right, okay.
Now, I've seen renewals come in that have been -4% and 5%. I've seen renewals as high as 70%. But again, not every group is really geared for the level funded approach, but it's worth exploring, because at this point, unfortunately, there's not a lot of other options in the smaller, under 50 marketplace.
So you can do this with how small of a company would actually be worth taking a look at that?
You could go actually down to 5 lives with level funding.
5 employees?
5 employees on the plan. Now, if it goes smaller than that, there's some funding issues that obviously are not...
Yeah, that's pretty small.
But it is very small. In the past, I never ever would have recommended looking at self-funding as a potential option.
Right.
But the way the product is specifically geared, there is really a lot of safeguards, so it really doesn't, set a company up for any kind of a default or bankruptcy.
So the type of business you're in, if you're a retail business or you're manufacturing or contractor or whatever, you're in a pool with a lot of others like that, or how did that...
Believe it or not,
get mixed in together with everybody else?
With level funding, you're kind of on your own.
Okay.
So you're taking the risk, and depending on the health or not so health of your employees will determine what your potential next increase will be.
Okay.
One of the things I've liked about level funding is that the carriers are really trying to make some inroads for the product.
Yeah.
So at this present time, it's kind of like the old Wild West, where you can go back to a carrier and actually negotiate what the rates are.
Wow.
Where in the fully insured world, what you see is what you get, and the only way to lower... No, not at all, not at all. And so that's why I think that for those employers that are looking for some different types of options, you have to look at fully insured, but looking at level funding and PEOs are also a great opportunity.
Right.
Now,
is there any tax strategy involved with any of these, or it's just the typical employee benefits, how the expenses run through the taxes? Filing for the company? Is there anything
well, right now there's not any kind of overriding big special type of thing by doing a level funding, other than the fact that if you now take an active hand in managing your employees, doing wellness type of initiatives, and keep your claim costs low, you're actually going to reduce your overall expenditure on health. And obviously, in a business,
it's going to become a little more important maybe than it was before.
Exactly. So, for those companies that are looking to grow and they have a fairly young population, a fairly healthy population, a PEO and or level funding might be the way to go.
Right. I mean, this is completely different than a lot of people expect.
Yeah, it's like I said, they really don't. And the interesting part is that when we come across companies that haven't seen it, they really get their eyes open because it's not business as usual.
Right.
Now, if you happen to be in the 50-plus market space, there's a few other types of options that you might want to consider. Obviously, there's regular self-funding, which talks about or includes stop loss and different things like that.
Right.
But there's also captives, which I'm not sure if many people are familiar with them.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So you're right. A lot of people don't realize that you do captives unless they're huge.
Correct. With a captive, it really is kind of a different methodology because you're typically joining a group that could be either homogeneous or heterogeneous, and depending on the type of risks that are in that particular pool, you all share in the stop loss risk. So your plan could be different from the next guy or the next guy's plan, but you're all kind of sharing in that stop loss. And if things run well, there's a potential for a dividend to be given at the end of the year. So it's another very good question. Typically there's a board that will manage it, and people who are in it from a company standpoint all participate in the overall management. Now you'll have a third-party administrator doing a lot of the administration for you, but by and large it's a concept which really hasn't been taken advantage of by many Connecticut companies because unfortunately in a lot of situations you can go into what we call a death spiral. So all of a sudden the big mainstay company has tremendous claim activity this year, and then everybody's premiums go up and they feel that they can get a better price point somewhere outside of that captive. So if it's managed correctly, it could be a real nice benefit to the companies that are involved with it.
But is this done by state by state? Like if we have clients in other states that each one is its own separate thing, or are these done more geographically?
They could be any of the above.
Okay.
So if you have a regional captive, or let's say a captive, maybe you have a bunch of private schools, and they've all decided they want to get together and share in the insurance risk. Similar business makes it easier to predict from an actuarial standpoint. So it's a neat concept. Not a lot of companies have taken advantage of it or explored it, but again, there's also a lot of the permutations that come with these programs, because there's a lot of companies out there right now that have special arrangements with pharmacy benefit managers. So when they do self-funding, they have special arrangements where the prescription drug costs, which are typically your big ticket items, those are the ones that somehow get managed more stringently. And then overall what ends up happening is that you can see some significant savings with those type of managed pharmacy plans. So again, Brent, there's a ton of different options and opportunities for people.
It is kind of the Wild West.
It is the Wild West. Yeah, I will tell you that probably about 10 years ago we didn't have anywhere close to the options we have today.
Is this just because of technology, or what's fueling it, or is it
I think that
deregulation?
I think it's like the old New Englander, the old Yankee who says, something, there's got to be a better way to do something. So you're having people come up with different ways and methodologies. And right now, as long as someone is open-minded, I think it's a great opportunity for them to explore different options.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you really need somebody that can really spreadsheet all this to figure it out. Otherwise, you're going to be lost in the woods immediately. I think I would be, certainly.
Well,
I tried to figure it out.
I really do think you need a trusted advisor who kind of knows the marketplace. They know the carriers and the different providers who are going to be able to pull this all together. If you don't have someone who's an expert at this, it really can go awry. And that's something you really don't want to mess with, because health insurance costs, they're typically one of your top 5 costs right now of doing business. So you'd rather not mess that up.
And so then, do the employees still have the variety of choices, or are they limited because of maybe this structure keeps them down? Do you only get these 2 flavors, vanilla and chocolate? Or?
Believe it or not, if and when you settle on a strategy, so assuming that you're going to do a professional employer organization, what you would do is you'd get 3, 4, 5 different products for people to actually take a look at.
I see.
So if someone wants a very high-end product, they can get the rich gold level plan. If they are comfortable with doing health savings account. They can take a very cost-effective plan with a high upfront deductible, open themselves up a health savings account, and then have lots, or probably a much less onerous problem trying to pay for all of the premiums that they have to come out of their paycheck.
So each employee can sort of pick from the
They pick and choose. That's correct.
All right, so it gives everybody a choice if they want the HSA route or not. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And certainly there's some tax benefits to the HSA.
Sure. And it's not to say, Brent, that anybody who's in a fully insured program right now, that all is lost.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've spent a lot of time doing over the last 15 years is doing various and very differently creative types of health reimbursement arrangements, where we take an upfront deductible health savings account compatible plan and just fund with a secondary plan part of that upfront deductible. So an employer can choose to pay 50-50 during the deductible period. They can decide to, pay a little bit up front, have a donut hole, and pay some on the back end. But there's so many different permutations you can do with a health reimbursement arrangement that in and of itself, if a company doesn't qualify for any of these types of level funded or self-funded arrangements, doing this would be the next best thing.
Right. And so the company can actually sort of dial in what level of exposure, expenses that they want to cover.
Exactly.
Deduct that piece and then let the employees pick up the rest.
That's exactly right. In fact, a lot of companies out there have already had trusted advisors they've worked with for years.
Yeah.
One of the things we've realized is that, people are very reluctant to leave their own trusted advisors. So what we've done is we've come up with a way to actually kind of do like a little oversight of what a current broker does.
Okay.
So we would be able to come into an actual company and say, look, we'll take a look at your benefit program, and for a fee, we'll come in, weigh the pros and the cons, things you're doing right, suggestions on what you might be able to do differently, and give you different options that you can actually implement.
Okay.
Now, if you decide to,
consulting.
it's straight consulting. So if you'd like to take advantage of our strategy, then we'll waive the fee and you can hire us on as a broker. Or if you want to keep your broker, you could take the proprietary information we've developed and then implement it, through your current existing broker relationship.
That's a good, fair way to do it. And they get a chance to sort of see maybe ideas that their gal hadn't brought up.
Exactly. Exactly.
I was talking with, it's not really your line of work, but Aflac brokers. And they're pretty much locked up to what the company allows them to offer. And, it's very restraining on that broker. So a lot of times I think their clients may not have really all those options where working through an independent, fully integrated firm like yourself. There's options there that you can discuss that they don't even have the ability to.
That's correct, Brent. And it's interesting because one of the biggest complaints that we have when we see a new prospect or even an existing client is that people want choice. They want to be self-determining about what they will choose for their health care and how they want to be covered. Now, in the state of Connecticut, unfortunately, I can't have multiple carriers at the same company unless, of course, there are over 1,000 lives, and carriers will agree to coexist.
Right.
But by and large, as long as you pick a carrier that's got a depth and breadth of product options, you really could go to town on the different types of products and types of benefit levels and things that people can choose from.
Yeah. So it's not just the carrier; it's actually the structure.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
That opens up a lot of other alternatives. So are there other benefits in addition to health insurance that can be managed with these PEOs?
Believe it or not, the PEO is almost a one-stop shop. What PEOs are able to do is to not only just offer medical insurance, but they can also offer dental, disability, life insurance, vision coverage, voluntary benefits. All the stuff you normally see. And what's nice is that with the PEO, you're able to have literally one list bill that will list out the employees' names and the different costs associated with their employment. And the nice thing about the PEO, where it's co-employment, is that the PEO is actually responsible for hiring and firing those employees for the business owner. So if the business owner wants to just focus,
HR department,
exactly,
it's your HR department.
It's your HR department, it's your payroll, just as I had mentioned before. It's really all inclusive. I will have to say though, in parochial New England, It hasn't been as popular because most companies that have been started by somebody and they've been in business for 30, 40, 50 years,
They don't like change.
they don't care for change.
Right.
But that's okay, because we could still take a look at other types of products and services that might be, you know, a little more suited to them, at least at this stage of their company's life.
But so it really depends on the region of the country that you're in, I suppose. There's different attitudes in the southeast.
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. So you have to kind of dial in a little bit, and that's where, you know, listening plays a really big factor, because you can tell usually through a good conversation where they're leaning toward and what they're going to be comfortable with. So that's why having multiple options tends to be the best opportunity
So where are you
for
seeing
us.
the biggest advantage? Like, are there some situations where it's like, I know they can, that type of business, they've been with the same broker for 20 years, and, you know, it's like, they haven't ever had taken a look at it. There's probably a big gap there. I'm guessing maybe that
Believe it or not,
tend to get sometimes just very comfortable. Yeah, just leave that
just
one
let it
alone,
right. Just let it go.
Right?
We, it's interesting you mention that, because we ourselves are constantly challenged and faced with coming up with new ideas and creativity for our own existing clients.
Right.
The
I mean, that's what's good about you guys. Is you're really proactive, even with your existing. You don't count your chickens with it.
Exactly.
You earn it every year.
That's exactly right. Our philosophy has always been, every year we have to earn their trust again.
Right.
Because you're only as good as whatever scenario you implemented last year.
Yeah.
So we find that most of the time that when we go out to a potential prospect, we find that just listening to how their company is run, what their type of values and expectations are, it really kind of helps us to zero in on what type of a solution might work best for them. In many instances, they already have a workable solution, but with a couple of tweaks here and there, all of a sudden we can get to a different point with them. In fact, there was a client I had in East Hartford, Connecticut, that basically had seen everything that I possibly could have shown them. And what it came down to was the fact that their employee contribution strategy was killing them. So all we did was we took a look at the employer-employee contribution strategy and showed them a different way to be able to allocate their funds. So now, every year, they have a set dollar amount that they're able to put toward their benefits, and it's a lot more easy for their employees to, pay for their coverage, as well as the budgeting for the company. Yeah, it's been tremendous. So it's not just carrier stuff; it's the actual strategy behind it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when you start to sort of peel back the onion, you really see there's a lot.
There really is. There really is.
And it's not just cost savings, but there's just general administrative stuff that you can maybe not have to do what you're doing.
That's correct.
Which is always a headache, for most business owners. They've got somebody or whatever, and it's just like they're overwhelmed with all this stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
And something else too, which I think a lot of companies don't realize, you don't have to be the size of IBM or GE to get those types of servicing and benefit levels. So what we've always prided ourselves on is being able to give big company benefits to smaller organizations. So if someone's really looking for a full-blown benefits program, assistance with health reimbursement arrangements, or writing a handbook, or doing online enrollment, or having some sort of a website that's geared just to their employee benefits. These are all the things that we bring to the table, and in most instances is without any additional cost. So those are the types of things that I think are important for companies to realize.
They are. People want to use the digital tools to make their life easier running the business. Well, that's been very informative. Thank you, Tyler.
That's not a problem, Brent. Always good to see you.
Thank you.